Well, you know, it's such a wonderful evening, and we're going to take a couple of minutes here to introduce a fantastic shepherdess who is just on the north side of Strum, and we are so incredibly grateful that she's opened up her farm to host an event. We have a few of these in Trempealeau County. That's called a pasture walk. And folks from the area and sometimes far distances are going to come out here tonight and learn a little bit about pasture management. And with me I have Laurel Kiefer, who has quite a long grocery list of alphabet soup behind her name, and one of them is what I would consider to be a master shepherd.
Thank you, Mary. It's lovely to have you here. I'm delighted to have the host, and it'll probably be my last one as I'm moving on. Been doing this sheep thing since the early 90s, and I'm ready to move on to more play and less work. I'm on the downside of my sheep business. At one point, we were milking 300 ewes. And due to a lot of situations, I'm down to probably about 30 sheep now, and those will all be gone by the end of the year. So,
Okay.
We're moving out. But I have, you know, I hate to see pasture land not being used. And so I was struggling with what's next. And I know that when we moved here in '91, all of the pastures were full of all kinds of shrubs and trees, and had not had anything put on them for probably 30 years.
Okay.
So we really wanted to do sustainable agriculture, and so we took heart in learning as much as we can. Went to a lot of workshops. Certainly the grazing workshops were very important as part of that. So we've done the fencing and the frost seeding and the intensive rotational grazing and all of that good stuff.
But you and at the time your husband, who has since passed, you guys really took it over the edge, because you kind of jumped way into the sheep and way into building that milking herd, as well as building an actual sheep milking association. You got to help me with this. It all blends because it's been a few years.
It has. Tom was very, very deeply involved in the starting of the Wisconsin Sheep Dairy Cooperative, so he worked with that. I was deeply involved in the North American Sheep Dairy Association, as well as helping to start the Sheep Dairy Association of Wisconsin. So while we were very much involved in the day-to-day operations, we also did pasture poultry for about 3 or 4, maybe 5 years. We were doing 700 to 1,000 birds.
That's a lot of chickens.
Up and down these hills, pulling the cages up and down these hills.
Pasture chickens.
Yes, pasture chickens as well. So, you know, it was quite a journey that we took. But I think part of what was, advantageous to us, that is not necessarily here any longer, is that at that point the University of Wisconsin was putting a lot of resource into the Spooner Sheep Station.
Absolutely.
They were putting a lot of resources into the Arlington Sheep Station. They had a sheep specialist in David Thomas, whose position has been eliminated essentially. And so...
and that really has a ripple effect across the whole industry.
Absolutely. It's like when we started out in the sheep industry, before we were into dairy, we would go to the Wisconsin Sheep Breeders Cooperative, Wisconsin Sheep Breeders annual meeting in Madison, and it would be 3 full days, and it was almost exclusively devoted to sheep management and health and wellness and all of that. And there were 700 to 1,000 people that would attend that. We'd take our kids out of school. Other people would do that. We had people from all over the U.S. and Canada that would come to that. And now, I mean, I don't want to put any kind of a negative context on what happens now in Jefferson, but it's almost exclusively about crafting. I mean,
yes.
And there's virtually nothing anymore about how do you how do you raise sheep and networking on sheep and the sheep production.
And it's complicated. It's
And
not,
it's complicated.
and they're not cows.
And they're not cows, and their nutrition is not cows. And the other part of it is that so people that are starting out end up relying on the chat groups and on YouTubes. And, again, anybody can be an expert on YouTube.
Especially if you're more than 50 miles away from home.
Anybody can be an expert, and so
And some of those posts can be dangerous to the health of your flock.
And I think that in a lot of cases, people are buying stuff that they don't need because they get in the chat groups and they say, well, you need to have this and this and this and this. And it's like, whoa, back up. Look at what you have now, and that's part of what we're going to do tonight. Is we're going to go pretty deep into, with the survey, anyways. I really want people to think deeply about how serious are they about raising sheep. I've seen so many people get excited, and we sold breeding stock for for 20 years. We sold breeding stock because we kept really good records, and we were paid a lot of attention to genetics and that sort of thing. And I just see that people gift animals. They pull animals together. I had somebody who bought something that was supposedly parasite resistant. Well, the sheep had never been on pasture.
Oh,
so,
that's kind of easy fix.
So it's an easy thing, right? So I want to talk tonight a lot about, and I don't want to get preachy, but I do want to talk about, what are some of the common sense kinds of things, and does your family want to take vacations?
Well, the one thing I've encountered across my conservation career, which a lot of it was swirled into managed grazing, is a living animal, whether it's a chicken, a duck, a cow, a sheep, a goat, that becomes I always tease and say that's the first wife.
Absolutely.
Because they have to be tended to 365, et cetera, et cetera.
Exactly.
And you're spot on. There's this unrealistic view that farming is fun and easy.
It's romantic. It's so romanticized.
Oh, there you go, romantic.
It's so romanticized, and I see that with a lot of people who are just starting out, and all of a sudden there's not somebody to take care of their animals.
Yeah.
And it's a burden, and
it can be overwhelming. Mm-hmm. To the family themselves.
Absolutely.
And it's so critically important that we get the opportunity tonight for you to share your knowledge as well as tied in with Duane's knowledge, because this is a really good place to start. And because of the fantastic WTCO community television that we have here in Trempealeau County, we'll be able to share this all over the place.
That sounds wonderful.
And thank you so much for hosting us.
You're welcome.
And we appreciate all the pasture walks you've had in the past, all the work that you've done, and the work that you will continue to do just by having conversations and chit-chatting about the vast knowledge that you have.
Thank you, Mary. It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, now we get an opportunity to visit with a fellow that I've known for since the 1980s. He actually married a young lady that lived on the same dorm floor as I did at UW River Falls. See, I have a memory like a steel trap. So with us now is our co-host for tonight's pasture walk here just north of Strum. And this is Duane Klindworth, who I would consider a master shepherd, just as I consider Laurel in the work that they've done over their careers with management of sheep. And so Duane, thank you so much for getting out of haying tonight to come and do a pasture walk. Look at the smirk. There we go. We know what's going on. So tell us a little bit about Lamb-A-Lot. Acres.
Acres. How far back do I need to go?
Well, you could fast forward a little bit from like 1980 something, okay? We could maybe skip a little bit in there.
A few decades. Actually, I will go back though, because I got interested in sheep when I was in elementary with bottle lambs from the neighbors. Back in the 70s and 80s, more sheep flocks were prevalent in the countrysides. Since then, when my wife and I got married, we had a small acreage, and we decided we did not want to mow at all. With our backgrounds, we just figured the grass was better utilized for livestock, and so we chose to get some sheep.
Absolutely.
And that was back in Minnesota, back in '93. And then we actually moved down to Missouri and took some sheep with us down there and increased our flock. And then as time progressed, we moved back up here to Wisconsin, and we have definitely increased our flock now.
And about how many ewes are you running?
We're running over 300 ewes.
Okay, wow. So you've got a lot of critters.
Yeah, that's why it's called Lamb-a-lot Acres.
Lamb-a-lot. I get it. Fabulous. And now this isn't just grow up your lambs and, you know, sell them as breeding stock. You actually, you and Deanna, we got to give her credit in this whole business. You guys launched a direct market business so that folks within the west central Wisconsin area could get good lamb, right?
Back in 2001, when we first got back up here, okay, we have these lambs. What do we do with them? At that time, our kids were little, and Deanna had the idea, well, maybe we could go and sell them at the farmer's market.
Oh.
So 2001 is when Deanna went and started this whole expansion, I guess, ultimately. So very much to her credit, that's where the size and scale we are today, is because of that. And we've been direct marketing since 2001.
And that's incredible. And it's, I mean, I see the lists that you guys have at market. It's incredible. The diversity and how utility lamb can be, just like pork, just like beef.
Exactly. Yeah. When Deanna first started selling at the farmer's market, there was another gentleman that was selling lamb sausage, and he never felt that lamb cuts would be of interest to people.
Really?
He figured sausage, summer sausage, snack sticks, you could get people to try, and that's something they're used to. But lamb cuts as a whole was kind of a little foreign. And he was quite amazed that things picked up and more people started buying our lamb, and we've grown a market ever since, and it's been very good.
And now you and Laurel have gotten together with kind of a really unique opportunity, because she wants her farm to stay in grass. And I would think and now I'm not a sheep expert by any means, but if you've got 300 ewes, how many lambs do you typically have? Because it's usually like 2 per, right?
You're shooting for 2 per.
Okay.
Ideally. Since we're on an accelerated program, we can get close to that. Not every lambing is going to have twins, especially when you're in an accelerated system. We shoot for having 3 lambings in 2 years.
Okay.
Ideally.
Works for you?
Yeah, and not enough. Because it is a challenge. Breeding sheep out of season is not the norm per se, but with our direct marketing, we have lamb available year-round that way.
Right.
So that poses a lot more management skills and methods because of that.
Well, and you're not only managing the sheep, you're managing their feed cycle because they have to eat, right? So in the summertime, we can do grazing, manage grazing, multitudes of different names you want to call it. But in the wintertime, we have typically this stuff on the ground that's usually white and about 12 to 14, sometimes 20 inches deep. kind of, you've got to feed those animals. So you've also got conventional farm chores just like everybody else, like making hay on a beautiful sunny August evening. But we are going to spend a little more time and learn a lot more from you, as well as Laurel, as we effort and enjoy this beautiful evening. And we so appreciate you, as well as your son Dylan. Wave at the camera, Dylan. For taking time from your busy schedule to help other folks learn about managing sheep, managing grass, and maybe a whole lot more.
This farm in 1991 and had sheep, started sheep about 2 years, 3 years into that. At one point we were milking 300 plus ewes and having about 600 lambs in the spring, which all were trained to milk machines and bottled by 3 days of age. And I did all of that, the training. So we've been through a lot. I am very similar to Tim. I am on the sunset of my sheep experience. My husband died 11 years ago this August, and I have been mostly doing this on my own for that long. And I am ready to have more fun and less work, more play, less work. And so this is kind of my sunset part of it. And I am delighted to be working with Duane. That as you can see, this land, this valley was not meant for corn or soybeans or anything else really except grazing. And we really didn't want to go with beef or horses because they're a lot harder on the soil and the terrain. And so sheep the erosion is minimal, and they do a good job of keeping things under control. It's not under control now. It has not been intensively grazed for probably since 2019 is when I sold the dairy flock. And then I pulled out, we had pastures every 100, 150 feet. There were fences so we could do intensive rotational grazing. The sheep got moved twice a day, morning and night, both. The fences did. And we had water lines throughout the entire farm, so there was always access to water. And interspersed with, after the sheep were grazed for about 5 years, we then had pastured poultry that followed up the sheep. And we did the cages up and down the hills. My kids did that. And once the chickens were gone, they really were very clear that, Mom, if you want chickens, you're doing it yourself. We did not do any more chickens after that, other than what's down here by the barn. So I am delighted to have you here. Duane and I are just getting started on our adventure, and you can imagine that after having not had animals out on the pastures for 6 years, the fences, I don't know about the rest of you, but fencing is an ongoing, pretty much as soon as the snow clears in the spring until the snow comes in the fall, you're doing fence work. So I'm tired of doing that too. So right now, Duane and I are working on it, and I've hired to have all of the perimeter fences professionally put back together, which of course is a lot of money, but it's I think for me, somebody was kind of being critical of, why are you doing all that investment? You're not going to get invested out. Well, but when you have an infrastructure in place, it's no longer about investment, it's about maintenance. And so we want to talk a lot about tonight about getting started and what you need and what you don't need, and also about make and do, and also about sheep are not little cows. And so they do have different nutritional needs. They have different needs. All right. So, Duane, do you want to say a little more about your operation, just to get started, and why we're working together?
My son and I, Dylan, yeah, he's right there. My wife and our other daughter, or our daughter, I should say. We started direct marketing in 2001. We had a small flock, and it's like, okay, what do we do with our lambs? Kids were young. My wife, Deanna, said, well, why don't I try and sell some down at a farmer's market in Eau Claire? And that's kind of how it started and evolved. We only had 16 or 20 ewes at that time, and like I said earlier, we're over 300 ewes. My son came back from college. He needed something to do. Our business has been growing, so we wanted to expand the operation. I've got some health issues at our home flock, and I have a hard time getting replacement animals because we would harvest all of our ewe lambs for direct marketing. So my thought was, if I could have a multiplier herd that would produce my replacement ewe lambs, that's what I would try to do. And potentially, instead of doing a total depop with our home flock, I've been able to take our replacement animals now. Percentage of those were OPP and foot rot free. They're on a different farm, but that's all dry lotted. Laurel and I have known each other for quite a while, and we talked about this venture and project a couple years ago, and this year Laurel was gracious enough to make some changes and let it happen. So we're very fortunate that we can take our replacement, our healthy multiplier animals, over to Laurel's property here and keep them clean from my commercial flock back at the home farm. So that's kind of where it is.
So for me, transitioning out of the operation, that's my goal is to probably sell the farm in 2 to 3, maybe 5 years. It kind of just depends where my life leads. But like I said earlier, I have a passion for I grew up on a cow dairy farm. I grew up milking cows and had a couple of sheep and a pony, and helped my grandpa with chickens and that yada yada yada. And I have very much of a passion that this farm does not end up in an absentee landowner situation. I want it to end up with a family who is really interested in doing agriculture to some degree, whether it's hobby or whatever. It is what it is. But so it seems to me, to get the pastures back going again, you need a lot of animals to do that. And so we are experimenting with net fences and with, how does that work, in different types of chargers, and just trying to see what we can make work. Because again, this was all divided up into 150-foot lots, paddocks with water, every paddock having access to water. The water system's not functioning anymore because, black pipe dies, right? I mean, it just does, right? And so we're trying to figure things out that way. I think some of the challenges are actually the water. If you're doing intensive rotational grazing, they need to have water where they're grazing. Otherwise, they come back and you see them all laying in a group in the shed, or they congregate near the water, and then they poop up the water, and all of the manure stays in the shed. It doesn't get distributed across the fields, and yada, yada, yada. So the things that we've got going right now are not ideal. And so hopefully next year we can maybe get some water lines put in and make that work, so that they can spread out, so we can spread the water out, and then they're more inclined to clean things up a little bit better. I think one of the things that we did not anticipate is, if it's okay, I talk a little bit about
the negatives.
One of the negative things, there's not very much, is that Duane had bought some sheep from me, and my flock I've got 2 flocks that were combined last year, but prior to that I had essentially a closed flock since the late 90s. And when you have a closed flock, your animals develop their own immune system. They develop their own thing. And anytime you bring a new animal in, they might be perfectly healthy, but every flock has its own karma, so to speak. And so one of the things, my animals were healthy, Duane's were healthy, we put them together, and all of my animals broke out with sore mouth. And I haven't had sore mouth here for 6 years at least. More than that, probably 10. So where did it come from? Because his looked great, mine looked great. They came together and boom. So
It's a different strain.
It's
Been
a-
there and done that.
yeah, been there, done that. So I guess, you know, if you're buying sheep, my advice is buy all your sheep from one person, from one place, and find out if that person has another. One of my kind of pet peeves is that there are people out there that want to do sheep and they get 3 or 4 or 5, and then they decide they don't want, so then they give them away. Well, it sounds like a great deal, right? Oh, you got a giveaway. Well, if that giveaway has been on 2 or 3 or 4 farms before it comes to your farm, guess what? You have a mulligan stew, or a really good stew of stuff. And so if you're going to buy animals, go from somebody like Tim or like Marlin, who has been doing this for years, and they've got their flock. They're probably, I'm guessing, you've had a closed flock for quite a while.
For the most part.
Yeah, except for rams, probably. Except for bringing on rams. Tim, yours has been closed what, for 20 years, probably?
No.
But I'm saying, and I bought Ramadales, purebred Ramadales, because I wanted to get into the livestock conservancy, the saving of endangered breeds of sheep. So the ones that I've got purebred Ramadales that I'm going to be trying to find homes for. So that piece of it is, if it's too good to be true, it probably is. And how long has your flock been closed? Have you had a closed flock?
My flock?
Yeah.
Uh,
So anytime you do that, you're going to end up with a mess. So there are sheep breeders out here who have had closed flocks, and for breeding stock, that's my best recommendation, is you find somebody that has had a closed flock for a while, or has been particularly, like the people I bought my Ramadales from, they were all OPP tested, they were scrapie tested, they had the genetics, the RR, QRs, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, we can talk about that later when we talk about diseases and things. And I had vaccinated for CL, and I had vaccinated for a couple other things for years, and we didn't, and to the point we never had those diseases in the flock. So there are things out there that a lot of people have no clue about, because if you haven't been in the sheep industry for a while, you don't know what all of that alphabet soup means. And I think it's also important that does anybody know what a zoonotic disease is? Anybody else? Okay, zoonotic diseases are diseases that can transfer from one species to an next. Sheep have several that are zoonotic. I've had sore mouth. Let me tell you, it's not fun. Chlamydia, toxoplasmosis. And those are things like when I had young women working with me, they wore gloves all the time. During lambing, I required that they wear gloves, because I didn't want any of my young girls or men to end up with chlamydia or toxoplasmosis. Even if we didn't have it on the flock, I didn't want to take that risk. So it kind of goes down to, with sheep, a lot of people say a sick sheep is a dead sheep, and I don't really believe that. I think sheep are very subtle. They give you clues. They tell you when they're not feeling good, and once you get to know your animals, like if their eyes don't look quite bright enough, if their ears are drooping. With our dairy sheep, we could always tell when somebody wasn't well, because sheep have a very distinctive social order, and they would come in the parlor in a certain order, and if somebody came in the parlor out of order, then we would check to see if they were ill, and they usually had mastitis, and so then we could treat the mastitis and deal with it. But Duane, what's your experience with the health stuff, and just a little bit here?
Like Laurel addressed earlier, especially with you new producers, if you've got a healthy source that you bought from, continue with that source for replacements. You just minimize your health issues in the future tremendously if you can buy from the same source. Because even if they don't have the cleanest flock, at least you're limited to the strains that they have. As soon as you bring something else in, like Laurel said, with the sore mouth, it's going to happen, and you're going to create problems.
Right now we've got a little bit of an issue. I think one of my rams jumped the fence in with his ewes. So I'm going to have to go see if I can find Adolf.
Just the other one?
Just the
yeah.
Hercules is still out here, but Adolf, we're not finding Adolf. So I think he has maybe decided to join your flock for a bit. So that is again another challenge.
Yes. Yes. Have your rams in a secure fence, and I mean a secure fence, not just a flimsy wire that's, that high. A 4-foot cattle panel a ram will jump over.
Just mark January 10th on your calendar.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly.
And honestly,
Yeah.
I've had rams breed through a net, a fence where you just put her butt right up to the fence, and he let her have it, and there you go. So it's not too much for these youngsters. They're farm kids, right?
Oh, she's seen it all.
They're going to be. So obviously we have some things to work out, and I'm hopeful that we're going to be able to continue to do that. So what's the benefit of doing this, Duane?
I was running out of room. I needed a place to put my sheep. And I'd much rather put them on grass instead of having to put mechanically harvested hay or feeds into them. And I knew that you were sitting here with a lot of grass in this valley. So that's why I approached you.
Yep. You've had some experience in some other places, right? You did some things with the solar and a couple other places too?
Eau Claire Electric Co-op in Fall Creek. They've got a 4-acre solar field that we graze that as well. This year we've rotated that. In the past we just stock set it. Just depends upon the growing seasons because it's sandier soil. But
Has that worked out well for you, just the 4 acres? I mean, the outreach, at your farmers markets, do people say those are your sheep or anything like that?
do some research and let me know. There's some people that say, well, yeah, I seen the sheep.
Yeah.
There's a neighbor right next door says, yeah, I seen them. I walk by there every day, and
Okay.
I'd like to think so.
Okay.
We are providing a service to the cooperative, electric cooperative, by not having to mechanically mow that and keep the vegetation down. So I'd like to think we're bringing some value to the community in the cooperative. So,
let's take a quick look at the survey. And
I better collect them.
mostly why I wanted to do this is...
Excuse me, Laurel, do you want me to collect them or not?
No.
Okay.
Nope, I don't need them.
Just
No. So we can just, they're just really it's a conversation piece mostly. Think about what are your primary goals in wanting to have sheep. And it's hobby for pets. Do you want to show them? I mean, these are all things that you need to think about if you're going to buy, because you're going to show them that's a certain kind of animal. If you just want a hobby, fine. Do you want to have them to manage invasive species like buckthorn, like autumn olive, like that kind of stuff? Are you planning on making money off of them? And if you think you want to make money off of them, think hard. Think real hard on that, because it's hard work to make money off of sheep. Are you thinking it's going to be meat? Is it going to be wool? Are you going to do breeding stock? Do you want to do all of the above? Because each one of those requires something different. If you want to do wool, then you need to invest in a very fine breed, fine-wooled breed, and you need to be thinking about where are you going to sell those fleeces and for how much, and the fiber market. If it's meat, well, Duane's an expert on the meat, right? We did dairy. That was our thing. That is also an option. We've talked about, this is more like number 2, how many do you have? How many do you want to have? That's kind of your thing. What breeds of sheep do you want to have? Do you have, like, the Katahdin is a really nice one if you don't want to have to shear. And shearers are becoming fewer and fewer around, and it's hard to find shearers. We've got some, Justin Taylor is doing shearing, and he does a really nice job, but there aren't very many of those around anymore. And shearing is hard work. There is a wonderful sheep school that continues to be held at Arlington every year. So if you're strong and able-bodied and you want to actually make a little bit of money, you might want to become a shearer.
May I put a little side
Please.
note? Indian Head Sheep and Goat Breeders Association used to have shearing schools annually at my place, spring and fall. If there's somebody that's interested, I can get a professional sheep shearer to come and teach you. Randy Shire can firsthand experience on the school and the instructor if you have any questions too. But I just, side note, if somebody wants to learn how to shear, talk to me or Randy.
Yeah, yeah, and that's local. But there is every
Yep.
spring there is the one down in at Arlington also. So that, I mean, I think it's still going every year.
December.
So,
It's actually December.
It's a December
First
now?
weekend in December.
Thank you. So think about what kind of breed of sheep you want. And I like the wool breeds, but I don't do much with the wool. So, you know, that's. But then I'm retiring. So, primary source. Your primary source of feed. Do you have enough pastures to be able to feed them? Sheep don't need to have a barn. They can stay out. If they're a wool sheep, they can stay outside all winter. They don't need to have shelter. We used to have purebred Rambouillets, and they'd be out there in the middle of the winter, and if they'd get a snowstorm, 6 inches, 10 inches, they'd get up, and they all of a sudden the hill would start to move, and they just get up and they shake themselves out, and they were just fine. And then they eat snow in the wintertime. So you don't have to have a super great barn. That barn was built in 2010. And it's a marvelous thing, but we had gotten to the point we had outgrown everything for our dairy operation. We were losing so many lambs through the weaning, because we couldn't keep the milk replacer machines warm, and there was just a lot of things like that. So, but you don't need a barn like that to raise sheep. Primary sources of feed. We were pretty much grass based, except for the dairy ewes had to have supplement. Dairy ewes are a totally different thing than these sheep are. Duane, you do a lot of different things with your feed, right? Talk a little bit about how you do your feed.
We raise our own non-GMO corn for ours because of the marketing purposes. We harvest our own hay. It's actually pretty simple. They've got a protein mix that goes in with the whole shell corn. Whole shell corn, doesn't have to be cracked. The pellet that we do have made is got minerals and additional vitamins in it. The hay, depending upon what stage of production is, your lactating ewes, you definitely want to have higher protein quality hay for them. For the lambs, you can get by with a little less. You got to go back to feed costs. If you've got good quality alfalfa hay or good quality grass with high protein, you don't need to supplement as much additional protein in the grain side of things. Mm-hmm. You can raise sheep strictly on good grass hay and alfalfa hay if you choose to. It's definitely doable. Your growth rates are obviously going to vary because of certain factors in the quality of the forage sources. So.
Yeah, the protein, and we did testing with that was back with Land O'Lakes. I mean, we always had all our hay tested, so we could get the relative feed value that would help to guide us as to what kind of supplementing we needed to do. The Romedales need virtually nothing. They're solid. They're good grazers. They're relatively easy sheep to have around. But the dairy sheep were not. You know, they needed a lot of extra protein. They needed a lot of extra fat in order to get the protein and the butter fat and the protein values in the milk to be able to make cheese. So, you know, what are you doing, and what the animal is will certainly determine what your feed is. But these pastures have. We did a lot of frost seeding early on. And that was even before we had a spreader. My husband would take the little hand thing on his shoulder, and he would walk the pastures up and down doing the frost seeding. And was a lot of work, but the pastures out here now have a mixes of clover, alfalfa, trefoil, 3 or 4 different types of grasses. And then, of course, the things like dandelions, which sheep actually love, and dandelions are full of incredible nutrients. And so, you know, that sort of thing. So we done pasture management. These are, you can see like if we start looking to the far right, we'll walk, but to the far right, I mowed those paddocks today just because after they've come through and they've grazed through, there's stuff they don't eat. And so I mow them so that the good stuff keeps coming up. The Pasture paddock right behind us, these two were mowed about, probably 3 weeks ago, as well as the far left one there. Now, none of these have been mowed. This is all Duane's sheep cleaning all of this up. And part of the problem is that I have an incredible infestation of pocket gophers, which makes it incredibly difficult to use machinery. And so what I'm hoping is that the sheep are going to eat enough and eat it down well enough so that all of the hawks and the eagles and the fox and the coyotes and the bobcat, I don't care, all of the stuff that's will come and feast on will find the pocket gophers and chomp and the owls and everything. So we're making progress. Duane and Dylan have worked extremely hard at making lines for net fences. And if you want to do intensive rotational grazing, you really need to have a net fences and a portable fencers. Chargers.
Yep.
Yeah. I think those are pretty essential pieces. And of course, Premier sells them, and I think there's a couple other places that do. But Premier One sells really high quality stuff, but start small.
They've got good resources too.
Yeah.
If you got any questions with their products, they will be able to answer them.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
They're really good sources. Premier's been around for what, 40, 50 years or whatever.
You pay for them, but it's quality.
Yeah.
And you get the resources to go behind that.
Acres of land. They figure 7 sheep per acre for intensive grazing. Has that changed any? That's kind of the old data. Is that about?
It really depends on.
And you also want to clarify the quality of forages that are available in that paddock area as well, because that's going to factor a lot of differences in there.
Yeah, it really will.
Yeah.
So if you've got a good salad mix, that's going to make a lot of difference, because a good salad mix will have a nice mix of protein and carbs and such, and that's ideal.
Legume and grass mixture.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's your ideal thing, and it can take years to get that established through the frost seeding and the fertility that comes in. I sold 20 acres, 40 acres to the north, to the neighbor to the north, and he came in and planted corn in some of it, and he had it tested, and he said that the land that I had sold him, with all of the 400 plus acres he had, the land that I sold him had the best nutritional value of anything that he had. So, and none of these have been tilled probably for 70 years. None of these paddocks. It's all intensive rotational grazing and frost seeding to do the improvements. So you don't have to have a lot of equipment, except you need to be able to mow it. You need to have some sort of a brush hog to clear it up after the sheep have gone through it and clean it up, and not hopefully have pocket gophers. All right. Source of feed. Duane alluded to this. What kind of cattle like their grain? What? Ground and chopped. Sheep like their grain whole. So whole corn for sheep. So you don't feed them the same way you do cattle, the cows or the beef. They prefer it. Their rumens prefer the whole corn. And if I'm wrong on that, somebody jump in. But I think that was what we were.
Marlon, you can help on this one.
Yeah.
I think you would agree, though, for a creep feed, starting young animals, it would be better to have it cracked.
It's going to depend on the stage of life for the animals. I start my lambs on soybean meal, which is very fine, very high protein, but it's a snack for them. At about a month, they will take fines up to a month of age, and then at that point, all of a sudden, they leave the fines, and then they'll go to
larger
large stuff. And we used we had, when we were doing the dairy, we had pellets. We had a pellet mix for the lambs and a separate pellet mix for the ewes. I think it was 18% protein for the lambs. So those are all things. Of course, to do pellets, you have to be willing to buy a ton, 2 tons, or whatever, because if you want them custom made, none of the co-ops around here are going to do
minimum 2 ton.
2 ton. Nobody's going to make them for you if you want a little bit.
Yep.
So We have a few mills around here that will custom make things, but a lot of them are not doing that anymore.
But that's also an opportunity for networking too.
Absolutely. Want to talk a little bit about where you get your information from on raising and caring for sheep. How many of you typically use chat groups or YouTube for your sheep information?
One person does?
Is that it? Where are the rest of you getting your information from?
Neighboring farmers in addition to what you said.
Wonderful. Okay.
Great.
I am very cautious about the YouTube and about the chat rooms. Some of my experience is anybody can be an expert if they tell themselves that they are. And you can get a lot of really interesting ideas that may or may not work. And the other part that I think can come off of that is that you can end up buying a lot of stuff that you really don't need because somebody recommends you need this, you need that, you need that. And think about keeping it simple. And when we started out, all of our gates were held together with baling twine. Now as we advance, we're able to buy clips. All of the wood for the first batch of feeders that we made came from buildings we tore down. We repurposed absolutely everything. And so hog panels, so I think there are a lot of folks that start up that invest way too much money early on, and then they find out that they really don't like sheep all that well to begin after all, and then they're stuck with, I'm kidding you not, thousands of dollars. So like, how much is a new net fest from Perunia right now? Is that like a 75 footer? Is that 150 bucks? Am I right? I don't know. I haven't bought them for a long time. 150, 200 bucks. A solar charger is about 350. So, I mean, I've seen people spend thousands and thousands of dollars on sheep that they got as gifts from several different farms. And that is a disaster in my mind waiting to happen. That we look at that I like to look at when we're doing pastures is I would go in, and these haven't been grazed for quite a while, but you look at kind of like a 3 by 3 foot kind of space, and you go on and you try to say, okay, what are the species that we have here? So it's hard right now because this hasn't been grazed intensively for like 6-7 years. So, but I'm going to want to look down, and I would want to see in this 3-4 foot, I'd want to see clover. Like up here, you can see that
It's got exposure.
That it's got exposure here. We've got some white Dutch clover coming in here. There's some red clover coming in here. Up here, here's a whole bunch of trefoil up here, and there's trefoil up there. Here's some more trefoil up here. There's some more clover up here. So you start looking at what's the salad mix that's in here. And quackgrass is really a good forage, so don't be afraid to have quackgrass in here. And you'll see that they've been in here enough so they've actually been eating off. The sheep will actually eat the burning nettle, which is what that is. Nettle has really good vitamin A and C. It's really a nutritious forage, so I know it's not really pleasant to work around, but you know, it's good stuff. And then of course here's a nice pocket gopher hole and all of that kind of pocket pound. If you turn around and look back there, you'll see that you can see some hinges of yellow. We start when did we?
1st of June.
1st of June. So that area, that whole area there they had that for what, 2 weeks, I suppose, maybe? At least, maybe even 3, 2 to 3 weeks. And it's coming back really well, but there was a lot of growth there. And now if we were to go over there and look, we'd see trefoil, we'd see clover, we'd see white Dutch clover, we'd see all that kind of mix over there, and they've started to really take down the berry, the brambles and things like that. And when we put this together, when we built the house, the yard that you were sitting on used to be a swamp, and we filled that in with the excavation from the house. None of the buildings that are here now were here when we moved onto this property. Everything has been completely renovated, so nothing was here. Everything that's here is new within the last 30 years.
definitely want a diversity of
So we intentionally put a water line up to the top of the hill up there. So there's a hydrant up at the top, which feeds the water, which fed the water that whole half side of the farm. There's a water hydrant just off to the side where the fencer is, on the other side of that blue feeder, and that feeds this half of the farm. And it's all on one well. And probably would have been good to have a second well, because it's a lot of pressure, especially when we're pumping water all the way up to the top of that knoll, and if up where those trees are, we pump water all the way up to that knoll, because there's water, again, there was water along 300 feet, water lines all the way through the entire farm. And then there was one point we were renting the property across the road, and we put in water line all the way through that line, through that 30 acres also. So that's a lot to maintain. In the winter, if you don't get it drained, it freezes, it pops, and the amount of water pressure it takes to keep that going is pretty intense. And all I have to do is have a sheep knock that bucket over, and the float keeps going and keeps going and keeps going, and all of a sudden your well's dry, and you wonder why. Well, because the sheep knocked it over. So there's things that we can work on for that sort of thing.
But the efficiency of grazing is greatly benefited by the water source, because my sheep the last 2 weeks have been coming back to that yellow water.
Yeah.
And if you look at my sheep, they're dirty because they lay underneath the shade, but they got to come back here for water.
Mm-hmm.
But what Laurel had it all set up nice before, as you rotate them, they're not going to be constantly laying in the same water source.
And then the manure gets spread all over.
Distributed a lot better.
The manure gets spread. And that's really important. That's a really important part about intensive rotational grazing. And it's really important, like we're not doing that this here yet. And that is moving them pretty much every day they get moved. So small amounts of pasture moved frequently. And that's when you improve the fertility, that's when you improve the composition of the salad and all of that sort of thing.
We don't have enough sheep in this area.
No.
By no means.
How many do you have here?
Dylan? There's 80, 85, 85.
85-ish, I think?
Yeah, because we got another 30 to bring
Once you
over.
guys are gone, we're going to add
30 more.
30 more.
Yeah, yeah.
We used to, on a section that was like 100 feet up, 100 feet wide, we would graze 300 sheep on that for maybe 2 days maximum, because we'd move them in the morning, move them at night. It'd take 2 days for them to eat this down to probably the 3-inch or less. And then we'd rest it for 4 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks we'd get rested, so then it would pop back up and then it would be very rich.
Were you basically taking half, saving half?
No,
No?
no,
Taking a little more?
we took more.
Okay.
We took more.
Now, would you vary that though in the spring versus summer?
Yeah, because what is this? Help me out, somebody. Graze high when the sun is high, or graze low when what is it? What's the
Kevin?
One of you grazing people.
When it's hot and dry, you want to definitely leave some more cover so water has less ability to not go through a plant to get back to the sky. You want it to have to go through the plant to photosynthesize, to grow the sugars for the...
And you want to leave the shade there as well to keep the moisture in the ground.
So all the moisture stays in the soil or goes through a plant to leave rather than just bypassing the plant and going straight.
Thank you. It's nice to have that clarification. So there is a science to it. And so anything
I think there's an art with it too, though.
And an art to it, and just to enjoy I used to love walking up, and I had a really good sheepdog. His name was Samwise, yes, from the Lord of the Rings. Yes, I had a fantasy with that. Samwise, we had Samwise and Pippin as our sheepdogs. Anyway, I could go way up, and open up the net fence and have Sam take the animals all the way down here through all the corridors, down into the corral. They'd eat their grain, and then he'd wait for them, and then he would bring them all the way back up to me. And by the time I had the net fences reset, he would be bringing the sheep back up to me. Now that was wonderful. That was impressive. Bella doesn't do that, nor does Toby. I don't know where Toby is. Where did Toby go? But he was an exceptional dog. He was truly an exceptional dog, and they don't come. Those kind of dogs don't come very often. Questions or thoughts, comments from the grazing experts, and please